My mom's fiancé stole my college savings, $7,000, and my mom told me to shut up. So I turned them in to the police. Later, I found out that my father had left me a huge inheritance that the whole family is using. Recently, my mom and her fiancé were arrested, and now my maternal grandparents hate me for it. It all happened because I called the cops, and I had strong reasons for doing so. My mom and I never got along, especially after my dad died 10 years ago. I'm 17 now, and in a couple of months I'm supposed to start college. I always knew my mom wouldn't set aside a single penny for me, so I understood that I'd have to work and save money on my own. I started working at 14. After school, I took different part-time jobs and saved money for 4 years just to be able to pay at least a little toward tuition. Also, on birthdays and holidays, relatives often gave me money, which I also saved. In the end, I managed to save almost $7,000, and I was really proud of that. All the money was in cash. I kept it in a wooden box that my father had made for me. The box was hidden in the corner of a closet. I didn't have a bank account because my mom forbade me from opening one. I never told anyone about the box, so I still don't understand how anyone could have found it. A couple of days ago, I discovered the box was completely empty. When I asked my mom what happened, she said her fiancé took the money to invest in buying a new house. I went absolutely insane with rage when I heard that. There was a huge fight at home. It was me on one side, and my mom and her fiancé on the other. But in the end, I'm just a 17-year-old kid, and they're older and have the power, so I had to give in. The only thing I could do was go to my room, lock the door, and cry for hours. Everything I had been living for was now destroyed, and I'd have to start over from scratch. I wasn't even sure if I could save up again before college. I was in horrible pain and completely alone. That day, I made up my mind I would get revenge. Something like this couldn't go unpunished. Luckily, I managed to take revenge just 3 days later. Now they're under arrest and being held accountable for the crime they committed. The only problem is that my grandparents, who had always been on my side, suddenly turned against me. I really don't understand it. My mom's fiancé, I'll call him Rob, came into our lives 2 years ago, and I hated him at first sight. He's one of the worst people I've ever met. I'd even call him an abuser. He never hit me physically, but verbally and emotionally. Absolutely. Usually my mom took the brunt of it, but sometimes he would lash out at me too, saying whatever came into his head. He swore at me with all his might, tried to make me cry the same way he did with my mom. And when he saw that I didn't care, he got even more furious. That made him lose control and say even more horrible things. And my mom? She never even tried to protect me. After my father's death, my mom didn't date anyone for a few years. But then she met Rob. For the first couple of months, he seemed nice and tolerant. But then came their first serious fight, and that's when he showed his true face. He manipulated my mom however he wanted, and within 6 months, he had moved in with us. He's a useless, lazy idiot who couldn't keep a job for long. He's about 35, but still regularly asks his parents for money because he has absolutely no financial literacy and constantly spends more than he earns. When he fights with my mom, he takes money from his parents. And when things are calm between them, he's perfectly happy freeloading off my mother. The saddest part is that my mom isn't a billionaire who can afford to support a partner used to living large. She's just a senior manager at the local supermarket. Her salary isn't bad, but it's clearly not enough for the lifestyle Rob wants to live. One way or another, I never let their problems become mine. I tried to be as independent as possible since I was 14. I avoided asking my mom for anything except the bare essentials. And once I started earning money, I stopped asking her even for that. I don't ask my mom for anything, and the only things I rely on her for are food and a place to live. I don't expect her to do anything beyond that for me, because I know how pointless it is. She made it clear from my early childhood that she didn't like me. She was never kind to me, and I always had the feeling that she didn't need me at all. As I got older, that feeling turned into certainty. When my dad was alive, he always stood up for me and supported me when my mom got too angry. But after he died, I was left completely alone. That's how it's been for the past several years. When Rob showed up, things only got worse. But I always comforted myself with the thought that I'd leave for college soon and could forget all about this. Now that all seems absolutely unrealistic and unlikely. For 3 days after my money was stolen, I sat in my room doing nothing because I was in a terrible depression. The day after I found out the money was gone, we moved into a new house. I did all the chores I was supposed to but didn't say a word to my mom or Rob. And apparently, they didn't care at all. On the third day, my mom said I should dress nicely in the evening because they were throwing a housewarming party. I started yelling at her and told her I wasn't going to take part in anything because she had stolen my money. The only reason they could afford this house was because of the money they stole from me. That made my mom really angry. She said that now that we finally had our own home and didn't have to rent anymore, I should be happy for them and just shut up and forget it, because I was forever in her debt for raising me. She meant that she had raised me, even though that's literally her legal responsibility, and she didn't do me any kind of favor. As for the house, it was way too big for the three of us. I knew perfectly well they only bought it to impress others with a fancy address and spacious rooms. That day, I was so upset I did something I had never done before. I decided to call my dad's parents. It was pretty hard because after my dad died, my paternal grandparents distanced themselves from us. Maybe it was just too painful for them to keep in touch. I don't know why, but they just stopped communicating with us. Still, I had their phone numbers, and in a moment of desperation, I decided to call them. My maternal grandparents, who I'd had a better relationship with, took a neutral stance in this situation. On the day the money was stolen, I told my mom's parents what happened, hoping they'd talk to her and help sort it out. But they just said they were happy she was buying a new house, and that I should look on the bright side. We'd finally have a home and no longer have to worry about rent. That reaction seemed really strange to me because they had always tried to be on my side before. Maybe they never said anything directly to my mom, but they always sympathized with me. This time was different, and I couldn't understand why. I was so angry at them that I stopped speaking to them altogether. The day my mom told me to just deal with it, I decided to reach out to my grandparents on my dad's side, hoping they'd react differently and offer some hope for the future. I don't know why, but deep down I felt I had to call them. Luckily, they answered. As soon as they picked up, I told them everything that had happened. I said I understood that staying in touch with us must be painful and that they didn't want contact anymore, but this was an emergency, and if my dad were alive, he would want them to help me. I told them my mom took my money and that I had worked so hard for years to save for college, and now I wasn't even sure I could go. After I finished telling them everything, my grandfather said he didn't understand any of it because it turned out my dad had set up a college fund for me, and he didn't understand why I needed to save money separately at all. This came as a complete surprise to me because my mom never told me about it, and I never asked. I was just sure she hadn't saved anything for me. I completely forgot that my dad might have arranged something for me, since he knew he was going to die soon. He died so young that I assumed he didn't have time to prepare anything. So when my grandparents told me this, I was truly shocked. At that point, I was already extremely angry and upset, so I immediately asked my grandparents to send me some kind of proof that I could use against my mom. They said they would try to find the documents and call me back in a couple of hours. I sat in my room trying to piece everything together, and suddenly it hit me. My mom and Rob had clearly stolen the college fund to use the money for themselves and buy a house. As far as I knew, my mom didn't make enough to afford a house like that. And Rob hadn't worked for the last 3 months, so I doubted he had the money for it either. All I needed was proof, and then I would report everything to the police. A few hours later, my grandparents finally contacted me and sent photos of documents that my mom had signed, promising to spend the money left by my dad on my education and to ensure I had a comfortable life. I literally laughed out loud when I read that, because she had done everything possible to make my life as uncomfortable as she could. My mom had signed those documents herself, and I was furious that my grandparents had never told me about them. It was like they abandoned me after my dad died and completely turned their backs. My mom was never really there for me. My maternal grandparents always seemed to be on my side, but maybe that was just an act. And my dad's parents were too lost in their own grief to care about me. When I asked my grandparents why they had never shown me these documents before, they gave me a pretty dumb explanation. They said they had just forgotten about them after my dad died, since I was still too young at the time. And then as I got older, we lost touch, and the documents just slipped their minds because they were getting old. I couldn't really argue with that, so I let it go. Once I had the evidence, I called a friend whose father worked in law enforcement and said I needed help. That evening, right in the middle of the housewarming party, my friend's dad showed up at our place with a police officer and a lawyer to arrest my mom and her fiancé. By spending my money, my mom basically set herself up for a lawsuit. She had violated the terms of an agreement she had personally signed many years ago. While I was explaining to the party guests what was going on, my mom and Rob were finally arrested, and it was the most satisfying moment of my life. Almost everyone they wanted to impress, former coworkers, friends, were just in shock and disgusted as they were taken away in handcuffs. Even in that moment, my mom and Rob looked so arrogant, staring at me like I had done something horrible. My mom's parents were also at the party, and when they saw their daughter being led away in handcuffs, they were deeply upset, and after that, they refused to speak to me. When all the guests left, I was alone in this huge house, and I had no idea what to do next. I felt awful, because even though they had been arrested, they'd probably be released on bail in just a few hours. Even though I was planning to press charges, it could take months for the case to move forward, and even then, there was a chance they'd find a way to twist things and turn the situation to their advantage. There was no way of knowing how it would end, and until then, I wouldn't be able to recover the money my dad had left for me. Either way, I was still losing. I couldn't sell the house because it was in my mom and Rob's name. And even if I wanted to force them to sell the house and return my money, I'd have to go to court and fight for it with a lawyer. Fortunately, I didn't have to worry about expenses, because my friend and his father were so kind that they promised to arrange everything, understanding how difficult my situation was. However, I had no idea what to do next. Things were made even worse by the fact that the only people who had been on my side now refused to speak to me. My maternal grandparents said they no longer wanted anything to do with me, claiming I was an ungrateful son. They could understand that my mom and I had a bad relationship, but sending her to jail after everything she had allegedly done for me, that was too much for them. They completely cut ties with me, and that hurt the most. Now, I feel completely alone. For now, I've definitely won the battle against my mom and Rob, but in the long term, it feels like I've lost much more. I don't know what to do anymore and feel completely helpless for sending my mom and her fiancé to jail for stealing the savings I had built up for my future and that they spent to buy their new house. Before we move on to the next update, let's stop for a moment and share some thoughts about this story in the comments. In my opinion, no matter how much commentators criticize the situation, it's clearly complicated. On the one hand, yes, the author's actions are understandable and justified, but on the other hand, doing this to your own parents feels extremely wrong. If I put myself in the mother's place, damn, if my son did that to me, it would be incredibly painful. I wouldn't even understand why I had a child in the first place if things could end up like that. Technically, yes, raising a child is a parent's responsibility, and they owe that to you simply because you were born. But at the same time, no one asked them to have a child, and yet she did raise him, spend her money and efforts on him, so it feels wrong too. You only fully realize all of this once you have your own children. In short, it's a very philosophical question in my opinion. Let's move on to the update and find out what happened next. First update, I moved out of the house where I had been living, the very house that my mom and Rob had bought. The reason was that it had already been a week since I filed the police report against them, and after 48 hours in custody, they had been released. As soon as I heard they were coming back home, I decided to leave immediately because I absolutely didn't want any confrontation. I had already packed my things ahead of time, so all I had to do was walk out. Just as they were coming in, I walked out. They tried to stop me and talk to me, but I didn't want to interact with them and left as quickly as I could. I got into a taxi that I had called in advance and went straight to my friend's house, where I had been living for the last 3 days. By the way, it's the same friend whose father helped me with the police and the lawyer. Now, the three of us, my friend's dad, the lawyer, and I, meet daily to figure out how to resolve this case as quickly as possible. At this point, I'm so exhausted that I'm even willing to consider a settlement. We've arranged a meeting with them, their lawyer, and a court-appointed mediator. The meeting is scheduled in a couple of days. We'll see how the negotiations go. If they refuse to accept my terms, I'll have to go to court, and there's no telling how long that could drag on. I'll do my best to reach a peaceful settlement, but I want everything to be fair and for me to get the financial support I need to finish college. My friend's father has said that they can help me financially for now, but I feel very uncomfortable accepting their money. I don't know how to feel about it. Second update, well, something interesting happened, and I'm shaking with rage because what I found out is just disgusting. It all sounds suspicious, but my mom sent screenshots, so now I don't even know what to believe anymore. There are only 2 days left before our mediation meeting. And today, literally just a couple of hours ago, my mom contacted me by email saying she urgently needed to talk to me. I blocked her everywhere I could, so she had no way to contact me. But she created a new account and sent an email that turned everything upside down. I won't waste time. Let me get straight to the point. My whole damn family conspired against me. That's right. The reason why both sides of my grandparents were acting so strangely all this time is because they were part of the scheme from the very beginning. My mother didn't just spend the money my father left me on herself. They all took a cut and stayed silent about it. Now I finally understand why my maternal grandparents were so upset when I had my mom arrested, and why they always only pretended to support me, but never actually stood up to her. She had dirt on them. It also explains why my paternal grandparents didn't bother to tell me about the documents my mother signed until I asked myself. They were all in on it. And my mom sent me proof. She had been exchanging emails with them when I was about 14 or 15. Thankfully, she still had the messages, because they were all stupid enough to discuss everything over email. She sent me screenshots of those emails and said that since I had her arrested, it was only fair that everyone else involved be held accountable too. She said it wasn't fair that she alone should be punished when they were all part of the scheme and had used the money for their own benefit. My father left me a large sum of money, but all of them, including my father's lawyer, decided it would be better to hide it from me and use it for themselves. I still can't believe this happened. I keep rereading the emails, trying to make sense of it, because it just feels so unreal. My entire family turned against me, even my dad's parents, which is absolutely shocking. The only reason my grandparents finally told me about the documents and recently sent the proof is because they were overwhelmed with guilt and realized they were doing the wrong thing. When I called and asked for help, they decided to finally tell me the truth. They had planned to do it much earlier, but my mom and her parents convinced them to stay quiet, because otherwise it would drag them all down too. They promised not to come forward themselves, but said that if I ever asked, they would confess. When I asked if they could help, they decided to send me those documents as proof, and that's how everything came out. I'm glad they helped back then, but it doesn't excuse what they did. It also explains why they were acting so distant and awkward even after they sent the documents. They were feeling guilty. They still can't openly admit what they did, and they're clearly ashamed, as they should be. But right now, my brain just isn't functioning. I don't know what to believe or how to process any of this. I haven't even told my friend what I found out yet. It's just too overwhelming. I'm literally shaking. I feel betrayal, pain, and rage all at once, and I don't know what to do with all of these emotions. Obviously, I'll have to talk to the lawyer, because this is a huge revelation, and we absolutely have to bring it up during negotiations. My mother, in trying to drag everyone else down and get revenge on those who betrayed her, forgot that she's also further incriminating herself. She'll lose much more. Still, I'm glad she told me all of this, because now I know for sure that in this world, I have no one who truly stands by me, except maybe a couple of people. I can't rely on anyone, and that's just the reality. Probably the only thing I can do now is to tell my friend, so he can pass it along to his father, and we, together with the lawyer, can figure out what to do next. But no matter what, I will go to college. I've made that decision this year, and I'm not backing down. I'm ready to ask my friend's father for help, not to pay for my education, but to co-sign on an application for a student loan. This seems like the only possible option left. Third update. Hi. Today we had the meeting with the mediator. And just like I said I would, I brought up everything my mom told me. Basically, she confessed to everything she did, and now she will have to return the money that she, and the rest of the family, stole from me. She did try to justify herself by saying that part of the money supposedly went toward raising me, and therefore she shouldn't be blamed or expected to return the full amount from the trust. But I insisted that even if that were true, my grandparents still have to return their share. They didn't just take my money, they took away my dreams and ambitions. And I demand that everything be returned so I can live a decent life. I refuse to be dependent anymore. I discussed everything with the lawyer and my friend's father, and they told me that, unfortunately, cases like this aren't rare. But that doesn't change how cruelly my mother acted. They were just as furious as I was. They promised to do everything they could to make sure I'll never again have to depend on anyone financially. Because if that money hadn't been stolen from me, I could have lived a comfortable life from childhood. My father made sure of that before he died. He planned everything so I could be happy. But my family couldn't handle that. They had to take everything from me. That's how selfish they are. But now it's over. The lawyer and I have decided we'll strike at the heart of it. No more sitting back and watching them enjoy life at my expense. One thing is clear. There will be another meeting, and this time all of my grandparents will be present, because it's now obvious they were involved too. Maybe this will end up in court, but for now, I'll just take out a student loan and push through this period. But I will get justice, and more than that, I'll make sure they return everything they stole. That money was meant for me, and only me, not for them. It was a legal agreement my mom signed. And it was a promise they all made to my father, to protect me and make me happy. They're all traitors, and I never want to see them again. That's all for now. Like I said before, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Personally, if at first I had doubts about whether the author was right or not, now it's absolutely clear. He is 100% right. This was his mother and his grandparents stealing his future, his money. And there's no excuse for that. Thanks for watching this video to the end. Check out the previous one right here, and good luck to all of you.